This is a spread of 2 photos in Beyonce's Cowboy Carter art book that I believe holds the key to her 3-act reclamation arc: country as resistance, dance as reflection, and rock as revolution, culminating in a secret Act 4, a film as reimagination. On the left, Beyonce's birth certificate, where she was born. On the right, Beyonce poses Abraham Lincoln, seated at the Lincoln Memorial, the same site where Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his I Have a Dream speech. This memorial represents freedom. She was born free. Church girl. This is an aerial photo of the National Mall in Washington, D.C., comprised of the Lincoln Memorial, the reflecting pool, and the Washington Monument. This is the Renaissance stage. Renaissance means rebirth. On July 4th, 2025, the date marking white America's independence, Beyonce brings her Cowboy Carter and the Rodeo Circuit tour to Washington, D.C. This is no coincidence. The period immediately following Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation was called the Reconstruction Era, a time meant to help formerly enslaved people integrate into American society, but it failed miserably. Where the government abandoned Black Americans, Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X picked up the torch in the 1960s, demanding justice, power, and dignity. But the work is far from over. America remains divided, and the systems we navigate are still rigged. This is the Beyonce Bowl, where American flags hang draped in construction tarps. This is Kendrick stepping out on the Renaissance World Tour to perform his verse on America Has a Problem in a high-vis construction jacket. The message is clear. America is still under construction due to the failures of the Reconstruction era that never lived up to its promises. Beyonce and Kendrick Lamar are both picking up the torch of the legacies of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. In this video, I'm going to break down the significance of these 2 photos in the Cowboy Carter art book and explain why they map out the journey from reclaiming country to dance to rock music, and why I believe Beyonce will be working with none other than Rage Against the Machine in Act 3. Before we get into it, I just want to take a moment to ask if you enjoy my work, please like, comment, subscribe, and share this video with another Deep Dive Hive member. It's free to do and really helps boost the algorithm. The more engagement I get when a video first goes up, the more support YouTube and TikTok give it to reach more Hive members. And lastly, even though some of you still insist that I'm Julius, if you'd like to support my work financially, you can buy me a coffee at www.buymeacoffee.com/lorebreakers. A huge thank you to Margot, Daya, Erica, and Curry for their recent donations. Now, let's get into it. Act 1. Cowboy Carter. Resistance. America's National Mall is made up of 3 iconic monuments that sit together to tell a story: the Washington Monument, the reflecting pool, and the Lincoln Memorial. These landmarks create a powerful narrative about freedom, history, and the nation's values. I'm going to begin with the significance of Beyonce pose as the Lincoln Memorial in the Cowboy Carter art book and show how it is tied to the story told in Cowboy Carter. We know Cowboy Carter was originally planned to be released before Renaissance. That would have made the release order as follows: Cowboy Carter as Act 1, Renaissance as Act 2, and what I believe will be Black Betty as Act 3, before a secret Act 4 being a film titled Echoville. For the purposes of the thematic storytelling I'm illustrating in this video, I'll be referring to Cowboy Carter as Act 1. Here we have Beyonce pose as Abraham Lincoln from his statue at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. The Lincoln Memorial was built to honor Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, who led the country through the Civil War and abolished slavery through the Emancipation Proclamation. The memorial was completed and dedicated in Washington, D.C. on May 30th, 1922. While Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, freeing enslaved people in the Confederate-held territories, true freedom for all was delayed until June 19, 1865, when Union General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas, to enforce the proclamation, finally freeing the last enslaved people in the Confederate States. Beyonce's mother, Tina Knowles, was born and raised in Galveston, Texas, the site of where Juneteenth comes from. Lincoln was assassinated in April 1865, shortly after the Civil War ended. The official Reconstruction era under President Andrew Johnson lasted from 1865 to 1877. Although Lincoln laid the groundwork for Reconstruction, he did not live to see its full implementation. Sadly, this era of Reconstruction is often considered a complete failure, as many of the promises of equality, freedom, and protection for newly freed Black Americans were not fully realized, and the South quickly implemented measures that undermined these gains, such as segregation and harsh Jim Crow laws. It wasn't until the 1960s that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. picked up the torch to continue the fight for black people's equality during the Civil Rights era. His efforts culminated in the March on Washington in 1963, which he delivered his iconic "I Have a Dream" speech at the feet of Abraham Lincoln and the Lincoln Memorial. The powerful speech advocated for racial equality and justice, and it symbolized both the promise of emancipation that Lincoln began and the ongoing struggle for freedom and civil rights for black Americans. In this video I posted in October 2023, breaking down the Renaissance tour, I drew parallels between the Renaissance tour stage and the aerial view from the National Mall, specifically the Lincoln Memorial, reflecting Pool, and Washington Monument. I also pointed out how I believe Beyonce is positioning herself in the place of a modern-day MLK, blending the legacies of both MLK and Malcolm X. As she sings in Black Parade, she's a little Malcolm X and MLK mixed with Mama Tina. I also believe that she was referencing the March on Washington as a literal Black Parade. Now, in this photo of Beyonce pose at the Lincoln Memorial, we see Beyonce with an I engraved at the base of the C. If you weren't aware, Beyonce with an I is the original correct spelling of Tina Knowles' maiden name. But when Agnes Darion, Beyonce's grandmother, gave birth to Tina, the birth certificate had a clerical error, and Beyonce was spelled with an O instead of an I. When Agnes Darion requested a correction, she was denied it because she should just be happy with getting a birth certificate. Yet the seemingly small dismissive error turned into a symbol of resistance and the ultimate revenge. The name Beyonce spelled with an O became a global phenomenon, carried by a woman who would go on to become the greatest artist of the 21st century. Now she is reasserting its rightful spelling with an I. But by doing this, she's not only correcting a clerical mistake that refused to be corrected by a white racist nurse, but also symbolically taking vengeance for every racist person who tried to diminish the value and dignity of black people. It's also significant that Beyonce's birth certificate is placed right next to this photo, as it represents how black people have historically been required to prove their right to freedom and citizenship, much like the demands placed on figures such as Barack Obama and Kamala Harris, demanding that we see their birth certificates. Beyonce, by placing her birth certificate in the art book, is saying, here you go, I have nothing to hide, I was born free, and I have the right to be here. Beyonce was born free under the law, liberated by the work and sacrifices of generations before her, who fought for her right to exist, thrive, and make her voice heard. Additionally, when Beyonce sings I Was Born Free in Church Girl, she's asserting her right to use her body as she chooses, a direct challenge to the white puritanical Christianity that shaped America's foundation. This lyric isn't just about freedom in general, it's about a sexual and spiritual autonomy. Throughout her career, Beyonce's lyrics have signaled a return to African spiritual roots, one that remains wild and uncolonized, unlike the diluted morality policing version of Christianity imposed on black people by white colonial forces. She's rejecting the version of faith rooted in early pilgrim ideology, which prioritizes purity and control, especially over women's bodies. Unfortunately, many black Americans have adopted this white puritanical Christianity, which has led to the suppression of sexuality and personal expression. Beyonce, however, is saying no, she was born free to express all parts of herself, including her sexuality. She refuses to be silenced or expected to act demurely. This reflects how black people, particularly black women, have been policed both by society and by their own communities to conform to standards that reflect white ideals, often suppressing their true selves in the process. Beyonce's declaration is a reclamation of freedom and self-expression, asserting her right to be unapologetically herself, both spiritually and sexually. Cowboy Carter, as a representation of Beyonce's country and Southern legacy, taps into the historical and personal resistance, where her connection to freedom, struggle, and justice is woven into the very fabric of her being. It's about navigating the South, an area she deeply loves for its roots, culture, and history, while simultaneously confronting the rejection and hatred she faces from the very same South that often resists her, like when she performed daddy lessons at the CMAs. This duality highlights Beyonce's complex relationship with her Southern identity, the love for the land, the culture, and the music, but also the struggle against the systemic oppression and racism that continues to define it. Cowboy Carter embodies that tension, facing the painful history while celebrating the strength and resilience of the black community, especially the deep roots that black Southern artists like Beyonce continues to build upon. In summary, it breaks down like this. Act 1, Cowboy Carter. Country music. The Lincoln Memorial / the I Have a Dream speech location. Resistance. So, if we're defining each of these acts by one of these memorials in the National Mall, Cowboy Carter is the Lincoln Memorial, which is tied in with the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. and the continued fight for freedom. Got it? Act 2. Renaissance, reflection. Renaissance was always meant to be Act 2 in the succession. A moment of rebirth and reflection following the resistance of Cowboy Carter. If Cowboy Carter is the Lincoln Memorial, then Renaissance is the reflecting pool on the National Mall, a mirror between the foundation and freedom. The Washington Monument stands for America's founding ideals, and the Lincoln Memorial for the promise of emancipation. In between them lies this reflecting pool, a place where past and future meet. It is both literal and symbolic, asking us to look at the stories America tells itself and who gets left out of that reflection. By the 1920s, it was designed to mirror these iconic landmarks, the Lincoln Memorial and the Washington Monument. The reflecting pool was literally a place to reflect back the foundation and the future that this country was built on, okay? It creates a powerful and visual symbolic effect. In 1963, it became the gathering place during the March on Washington, the Black Parade, where Dr. King stood at Lincoln's feet and reflected those founding ideals back at the nation, demanding they include black lives. That is the spirit of Renaissance, a mirror held up to history, identity, and black joy, a moment to pause between struggle and future and ask, where are we now? That is why I believe Renaissance was defined by silver, the color of the moon, the ultimate reflector. Say noir was defined by silver. That was the fragrance that was released during this era. The moon doesn't generate its own light. It shines by reflecting the sun's light. And in that way, silver becomes a symbol of mirrored truth and quiet power. It's only visible in darkness. In alchemical and esoteric traditions, silver is the metal of intuition and reflection, of looking inward to find clarity, which is exactly what African Americans have been tasked to do since their history and homeland was stripped away from them. Silver is also associated with the planet Mercury, ruler of both Virgo and Gemini. Beyonce is a Virgo, Kendrick Lamar is a Gemini. Both are ruled by Mercury, the planet of communication, duality, and introspection. In Greek mythology, Mercury is known as Hermes, the messenger between worlds, guiding souls across thresholds, carrying meaning through speech, movement, and transformation. Hermes is the bridge, the guide, and the reflection of the gods. That is what makes Mercury's symbolism such a powerful fit for Renaissance. It's a project that moves fluidly through time, genre, spirit, and self, a mirror reflecting both the past and the future. It's no accident that Beyonce's most introspective, message-laden work is wrapped in chrome. The entire era gleamed with the reflective surfaces, in both sound and vision, drawing us into a mirrored world of memory, music, and soul. And if all of that doesn't blow your mind enough, look at this. I was going to find the still that's at Echoville Place during the Renaissance World Tour, the street sign, and it caught my eye that the driver of the car that's flying through the sky has wings on his helmet. This is exactly verbatim the depiction of Hermes in ancient Greek art. There are wings on his helmet. In fact, going back to the Vogue 2022 shoot, the thing that started off all my theories in the first place was this picture of Beyonce with wings around her ears and her head. I think that she could be calling to Hermes, as well as my theory around Morpheus and Hypnos, as Morpheus is the god of dreams, Hypnos is the god of sleep, and they communicated dreams from the gods down to the mortals, just as Hermes was a messenger god between the gods and the mortals. So any kind of Greek mythology gods would have wings on and around their head or their ears if they were messaging and going between the earthly realm and the god realm. So Hermes is definitely a reference. If anything, this driver is going to be some kind of communicator, or maybe the driver is Beyonce herself in the film with a helmet on, and she is going to be one of these communicating characters. The disco ball and the disco itself are portals, spaces that exist between worlds, liminal realms where we descend to dance, release, and undergo a rebirth, crawling back out into the newly born daylight. The disco ball serves as a fragmented mirror, scattering light in every direction. The mirror's brokenness is transformed into brilliance, reflecting light through beautiful radiant refractions. A million pieces of mirror are shattered and put back together into an even more beautiful thing. This mirrors the Black community's ability to turn pain into powerful art, showing that no matter how much we are shattered, we always return stronger, more resilient, more creative, and more beautiful. The club becomes the sanctuary, a place to lose yourself, find yourself, and emerge anew. I believe this was Beyonce's intention with Renaissance. Renaissance provided the sanctuary, the mirrored moment to dance, breathe, reflect, and remind ourselves that we are already and have always been whole. Our souls cannot be broken. Break my soul. The Renaissance House of Chrome, a place to be reborn, is a sacred pause, not just to gather with other like-minded people, but to gather with the parts of ourselves that we've hidden, lost, or forgotten. Just like the reflecting pool in the National Mall mirrors the monuments that surround it, Renaissance mirrors Beyonce's journey and ours. It lets us see what we've survived and imagine what's ahead. Between fighting for freedom, acts of resistance, and moments of revolution, we all need that mirrored space to reflect, recalibrate, and move forward with clarity. In short, Act 2 breaks down as Act 2, Renaissance, dance music, the reflecting pool in National Mall as its symbol, and the theme of reflection. Okay, let's go in to the final act. Act 3, Black Betty, Revolution. Beyonce's pose here is Abraham Lincoln on the Lincoln Memorial where MLK gave his I Have a Dream speech, looking over the reflecting pool where the March on Washington took place, staring out at the Washington Monument, a stone obelisk erected and opened to the public in 1888, representing George Washington and the vision he had for America. This monument is a giant, hard rock, a white phallic symbol representing those who founded this country, white men. And I believe Beyonce is here to lead the revolution to take down this giant hard rock through the genre of hard rock. This is Mary Morello on her 101st birthday, holding a signed copy of Beyonce's Renaissance, with the message addressing her as Queen Mary. You might wonder why this lovely lady has a signed album from Beyonce addressing her as Queen Mary. Who is this woman? The answer lies in her son, Tom Morello, the lead guitarist of the legendary rock band Rage Against the Machine. Mary Morello is not only the mother of Tom Morello, but also an influential activist in her own right. The connection between Beyonce, a cultural icon, and the mother of one of rock's most politically charged musicians. Rage Against the Machine is known for its bold political activism and intense music that critiques systemic injustice, corporate greed, and governmental corruption. Their music is a fusion of rap, rock, and revolutionary energy, often confronting issues of racial inequality, capitalism, and the abuse of power. This was the band's foundational message. The band's lyrics and ethos are grounded in a resistance and revolution against systems that oppress and exploit marginalized communities. It's in the actual name of the band, Rage Against the machine of corporate greed, the machine of capitalism, the machine of systemic injustice, the machine of government corruption. They are raging against these machines of inequality, particularly in the context of race, class, and power. Rage Against the Machine sings and raps about it in songs like Killing in the Name, Bulls on Parade, and Guerrilla Radio. These are all anthems of rebellion, directly calling out inequality and encouraging defiance against oppressive structures. I guarantee if you listen to any Rage Against the Machine song, you will instantly feel the urge to single-handedly lead a revolution. This music is charged, heavily charged with a revolutionary energy. Tom Morello, Rage Against the Machine's lead guitarist, whose mother is Mary Morello, who was holding the signed Renaissance album for her 101st birthday, he is known for his unapologetic leftist political views, which he channels through his music. His approach is deeply influenced by, of course, his mother, as well as civil rights leaders and political activists. Rage Against the Machine's message has always been about giving a voice to the voiceless, disrupting the status quo, and challenging the systems that perpetuate inequality. It's also interesting to me that Tom Morello has a show on Sirius XM called Tom Morello's Sonic Revolution. Now, I've been thinking that Country Radio Texas 100,000 watts of healing power would be a station on Sirius XM that Beyonce is going to be launching. I'm putting this theory out there now that Beyonce is going to be launching a station on Sirius XM. Rock music historically has been aligned with rebellion, individuality, and defiance. However, it's also been predominantly white, male-dominated, and exclusionary of marginalized voices. By entering the genre of rock, with the energy of Cowboy Carter and Renaissance behind her, Beyonce will be reclaiming a third genre and space that has been closed off to black folks and especially black women. Beyonce's embrace of rock, traditionally dominated by white men, giant white obelisks, and their symbolic obelisks of power, align seamlessly with the revolutionary spirit of Rage Against the Machine. This would be the perfect band for her to join forces with. Now, many of you are familiar with the parallels I've drawn between the Renaissance World Tour, specifically the Mind Control Interlude, and the themes in the 1999 film The Matrix. I highly recommend watching this video of mine, which breaks down the Renaissance World Tour imagery and how the sounds and visuals align with the movie's central themes. It shows how Beyonce is the one in Alien Superstar and mirrors Neo, the protagonist in The Matrix, who is known as the one, destined to break free from control. Control from the machine. In The Matrix, Neo faces a choice between the red pill, which awakens him to the truth about oppressive machine system, and the blue pill, which allows him to remain in ignorance. Now, we've seen a lot of red and blue in the visuals, particularly this one of her in all leather on a motorcycle with red and blue lights, and her hair in a style that reflects that of Niobe, who was played by Jada Pinkett Smith in the second Matrix movie. Coincidentally, or maybe not so coincidentally, Rage Against the Machine's song Wake Up is the closing track of the The Matrix, the song's revolutionary message and defiance against systems of control align perfectly with the themes in The Matrix, as Neo's quite literally raging against the machine in the film. The song Wake Up captures the call to action to awaken to the truth of how we are being used and reclaim our power to take the red pill. Just like Neo, Beyonce guides us through this pivotal choice. Throughout the Renaissance era, we're moving through portals of waking up. It's also interesting how we move through this portal that has all of these TVs and all of the different outfits we see in I'm That Girl. All of these TVs reminded me of the architect in the second Matrix film and him showing Neo in all of the different timelines that he's lived. This feeds into my theory that there are going to be multiple Beyoncés in different timelines, much like Everything Everywhere All at Once in this film, Echoville. It's going to mirror things that we saw in The Matrix. Now, lastly on the topic of The Matrix and Revolution, I can't play the audio here because I'll get flagged for copyright, but I highly recommend you listen to the song Clubbed to Death by Rob D from the Matrix soundtrack, specifically during the pivotal scene where Morpheus trains Neo to ignore the woman in the red dress who turns out to be an agent. Then go listen to America Has a Problem by Beyonce. You'll notice they share the same underlying chord progression and mood. I'll leave both tracks linked below in this video so you can hear the connection for yourself, but Clubbed to Death from The Matrix and America Have a Problem essentially have the same chord progression. Now, I believe the album will be called Black Betty because we not only have seen that written in the America Has a Problem newspaper, the Black Betty Tour, but she writes it again on the graffiti in the Cowboy Carter art book in the photo for her song Daughter. She also has BB written on the kick drum in this photo. So what is significant about Black Betty? Black Betty is a song with deep African-American origins that has been misattributed or whitewashed in mainstream culture. Though many people know it from its rock renditions like the 1977 version by Ram Jam, the song Black Betty was originally an African-American work song dating back to the early 20th century and possibly even earlier. Its earliest known recording was by the blues legend Lead Belly in the 1930s, though it's widely believed to have been part of the oral tradition of black laborers and prisoners long before that. The term Black Betty itself has been interpreted in different ways. Some say it refers to a musket, others a whip, others say it's a bottle of liquor, or even a prison transport vehicle. Regardless of interpretation, it carries layered meanings in the black community, often tied to oppression, pain, and survival. While Ram Jam, the white rock band, released their version in 1977, it stripped the song of its original cultural context and blues roots, turning it into a high-energy rock anthem without acknowledging its black lineage. They never said that it was originally by Lead Belly. They just took Black Betty and did their own version of it and profited off of it, and now that's the most famous version of Black Betty. If you look up Black Betty, it's their biggest song on Spotify, and everyone would attribute Black Betty to Ram Jam and not its black origins. This is a classic example of black musical innovation being co-opted by white artists without credit or compensation, a recurring pattern in American music history, especially rock, which itself birthed from blues and gospel traditions. Beyonce reclaiming the roots of Black Betty means honoring its place in black musical history, not just as a catchy tune, but of a cultural artifact shaped by black pain, resilience, and creativity. I think if she embodies this archetype of Black Betty, who I also think could be a counterpart to Cowboy Carter as a character, I think that it's going to be continuing this story from resistance to reflection to revolution. The history of black artists in rock music is marked by both groundbreaking contributions and significant erasure. While rock is often associated with white artists like Elvis Presley and the Rolling Stones, it was black musicians who laid the foundation of the genre. Artists like Chuck Berry, Sister Rosetta Tharpe, Little Richard, and Jimi Hendrix were pioneers of the sounds that eventually became rock and roll, yet their contributions were overshadowed and appropriated by white artists in mainstream media. Chuck Berry, often hailed as the father of rock and roll, revolutionized guitar playing and songwriting with his energetic, fast-paced rhythm and storytelling lyrics. However, much of his influence was absorbed by white rock artists who later became the faces of the genre, leading Chuck Berry to struggle for recognition. Little Richard, with his flamboyant style and raucous energy and high-energy performances, was pivotal in shaping early rock music and performances, but he too was overshadowed by white artists who adapted his sound and performance style for mass appeal. Sister Rosetta Tharpe, often referred to as the godmother of rock and roll, was a virtuosic guitar player and influential singer whose blend of gospel and blues became the blueprint of rock music. Despite her pioneering influence, her contributions were marginalized, and white artists like Elvis Presley and Jerry Lee Lewis became the icons of rock while she was relegated to the background. I think Beyonce's going to be aligning with Rage Against the Machine to do this revolutionary Black Betty album. But one other band that I think Beyonce might be referencing is Washington, D.C.'s very own Bad Brains. Bad Brains is a pioneering African-American band known for its fusion of hardcore punk and reggae, often credited with shaping the hardcore scene in the early 1980s. Formed in Washington, D.C. in 1977, the band's original lineup consisted of Dr. No on guitar, H.R. on vocals, Daryl Jennifer on bass, and Earl Hudson on drums. The group's energy and radical sound were distinct, blending high-speed punk rock with reggae rhythms, creating a style that was both fierce and rooted in black musical traditions. Their influence on both punk and rock cannot be overstated. While the Ramones were often hailed as the godfathers of punk rock, Bad Brains were equally voracious and prolific in their work. Bad Brains were not just musically innovative, but they were also one of the first all-black bands in the punk scene, challenging racial norms in the predominantly white genre with bands such as the Ramones, Dead Kennedys, Black Flag, and Fugazi, and the Velvet Underground leading the popularity of punk music. Bad Brains songs often contain political themes, of course because they were from Washington, D.C., and touching on issues like personal freedom, race, and the struggle of the oppressed. One of the most iconic images associated with Bad Brains is the cover of their 1982 debut album Bad Brains, also known as the Yellow Tape, which features a powerful visual of the Capitol building being struck by lightning. The Capitol building, located at the eastern end of the National Mall in Washington, D.C., could be considered a fourth monument in this iconic landscape. While the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Monument, and the reflecting pool dominate the central axis of the National Mall, the Capitol building stands as the seat of legislative power, symbolizing the political heart of the nation. Its structure is tied to the workings of government, the laws that govern the country, and the broader systems of power and control. In this context, the lightning strike on the Bad Brains cover serves as a metaphor for rebellion and disruption, symbolizing the band's challenge to authority, embodied by striking the Capitol down with a lightning bolt. Just as the Capitol building houses the mechanisms of governance, Bad Brains' image seeks to remind us that these systems can and should be questioned and confronted. In the broader context of the national landscape that includes monuments dedicated to figures like George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, the Capitol stands as both a literal and symbolic representation of this American power, which for Bad Brains and other rebels must be struck by the forces of revolution and change. Bad Brains' revolutionary sound and message were not easily accepted by mainstream rock culture, but their influence remains undeniable. Their contributions to punk, hardcore, and rock have inspired countless musicians, and the legacy continues to be a touchstone for those who challenge norms and fight for cultural expression. Another important point about the reclamation in hard rock is the parallel between Native Americans and African Americans in terms of reclaiming what was taken for them. I find it really interesting, and although this might be quite a stretch, the hard rock brand is owned by the Seminoles, one of the wealthiest Native American tribes. The Seminoles purchased Hard Rock International in 2007 for $965 million. So the actual Seminoles tribe owns the Hard Rock brand. They've transformed it into a hugely global brand, and their wealth from the gaming industry has allowed them to reinvest in their tribe, improving infrastructure, healthcare, and education, and to take care of their people in the tribe. Beyonce maybe could be referencing the Seminoles' ownership of the hard rock as a powerful metaphor. Once marginalized, the Seminoles have reclaimed their power by owning a cultural icon as the hard rock. Much like Beyonce calls for marginalized communities, especially black people, to take control of their own narratives and cultural capital, she may be urging black communities to follow this model, like the Seminoles, of reclaiming their identity, building wealth, and empowering their own communities to redefine their legacy. With all this to say, this is why I believe Act 3, which I think will be called Black Betty, will be defined as The Revolution, a heavy hard rock and punk album that aligns with the revolutionary message of Malcolm X more than the more peaceful version of protest that Martin Luther King talked about, which I think is reflected in Cowboy Carter. I think it's going to be a raw, intense, and uncompromising album channeling the spirit of those who fight back against systems of oppression with strength and defiance. The sound and tone will reflect this more militant revolutionary energy. So in short, Act 3, Black Betty, will be defined by the Washington Monument, the giant, white, phallic, hard rock. The genre is going to be rock, and the theme will be revolution. Act 4, Echoville. I just want to touch on this hidden Act 4, and I'm going to do a deeper dive on it. But I believe that the film will be the secret Act 4 called Echoville, and it's going to be defined by reimagination. So, Cowboy Carter, Resistance, Renaissance Reflection, Black Betty, Revolution, and Echoville, reimagination. We know that she has trademarked Echoville, and we've seen Echoville teased in different things throughout the Renaissance visuals, and in the background of the Renaissance film, someone had on an Echoville sweatshirt. I believe this project is going to expand on Beyonce's vision in the realm of a dystopian horror, exploring themes of resistance, reflection, and revolution. At its core, I believe Echoville will be a commentary on echo chambers we all risk falling into, especially in this digital and ideological age, and how dangerous it can be to be cut off from the full, complex truths of our shared history. Our social media algorithms are literally programmed to put us in these hyper-individualized echo chambers. I think Echoville the film would serve as a warning that when we only listen to the voices that mirror our own, we become isolated not just from other perspectives, but from our own humanity. We must understand the history, not just part of our own community, but other people's history, because we all share this country, this land, and the present moment. It's our collective responsibility to know the truth, to honor the past, and give flowers where flowers are due. If we allow ourselves to be divided by hate, fear, and misinformation, we only strengthen the systems, the machine that benefits from our separation. The machine thrives on our disconnection, and social media platforms and emerging technologies and AI can easily become tools of alienation, trapping us in algorithmic bubbles that reinforce bias and block empathy. Echoville, if in fact it is a secret Act 4, might be Beyonce's Magnum Opus as a film, calling us to wake up, break out of the loop, and reconnect, to reclaim truth and reclaim each other. This is one last-minute addition to this video. The Cowboy Carter tour just premiered its opening night in Los Angeles, and during this interlude, she winks at the Lincoln Memorial. What I've been saying through this entire video, that Cowboy Carter is tied to the Lincoln Memorial, if my theory is correct. Just like how, going into Act 3, it's going to be Betty Black and the Washington Monument taking it down. Act 2 is Cowboy Carter, the Lincoln Memorial, and continuing his legacy of emancipation. So, in closing, taken all together, Beyonce's recent work forms nothing short of a living monument, a reimagined national mall of Black reclamation, memory, and futurism. Cowboy Carter positions her on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, echoing both Lincoln's legacy and Dr. King's dream, reclaiming the space with her body and presence, as well as her own family history, with Beyonce with an eye engraved on the base of the seat. Renaissance becomes a reflecting pool, a portal of self-expression and freedom, shimmering with dance, queerness, and Black joy. And Black Betty rises like the Washington Monument, once a towering symbol of hard rock, white, patriarchal power that founded this nation, now pierced and possessed by a feminine force that it tried to exclude. Reclaiming the song and the structure, Beyonce drives a stake into the myth of the American purity and patriarchal values, usurping the power of the phallic obelisk into a symbol of feminine rage, creativity, and resurrection. And finally, Echoville, the secret Act 4 that I'm theorizing, looms like the Capitol dome being struck by lightning at the far end, the fourth monument, a dystopian vision warning us of the echo chambers, amnesia, and disconnection, calling us back into truth, resistance, community, and the collective power. Beyonce isn't just releasing albums, she's building a new symbolic architecture of American history, one that centers on the story, struggles, and spirit of the people long erased from its foundations. Now, if you've made it to the end of this video, drop a lightning bolt and the rock on emoji in the comments and let me know your thoughts. I love hearing what y'all think about these theories. And if you found this deep dive interesting, please share it with another member of the Deep Dive Hive. It really helps my channel grow. I do all of this in my free time after work, pulling more all-nighters than I'd like to admit, but I believe this work matters and I'm grateful to do it. If you'd like to support me further and help keep me going, you can buy me a coffee at www.buymeacoffee.com/lorebreakers. Again, thank you so much for supporting me. And that's it for today. Check the description below for the links and other deep dives I've done, and hear the song in The Matrix versus America Has a Problem that I mentioned earlier. It's pretty wild to hear how they are the exact same chord progressions. Until next time, love Lorebreakers.